a ham sandwich though on this. Just like one piece of cheese and like a whole pile of ham and like pickles, mustard. I'm like imagining the sandwich. I'd eat it just like that. Hello and welcome to this episode of Bake It Up a Notch. I'm Erin McDowell and I am so excited for today's episode where we are going to be making all things soft pretzels. I think soft pretzels are an incredible fall baking project, and I think you're gonna agree, especially when you see how easy these are to make. Traditional pretzel methods use food grade lye. I actually even used that in my very first recipe I posted on Food 52 years ago, but we're going much easier today with a soaking method that uses things you already have in your kitchen, like baking soda and eggs. It's gonna be buttery, it's gonna be cheesy, it's going to be soft and chewy, and best of all, this recipe is from my brand new book, Savory Baking. I'm so excited to dive in, so let's get baking.
I like pretzel day.
First step is mixing the dough. Now this dough could not be easier to mix. We are going to be using bread flour, and in my opinion, that is pretty crucial to the success here. Bread flour has a higher protein content than all-purpose, so while you can definitely still use all-purpose flour in a pinch, just remember some of that chewiness, some of that stuff that we love definitely comes from the higher protein content of the bread flour. We're also going to add some ingredients like sugar. It's not enough that this is gonna taste sweet, but it's gonna help maintain that softer texture, so it's very important. Don't leave it out. We also have some salt. And one thing I will advise you is, since soft pretzels typically also have salt on the outside, this is a good amount of salt to flavor this dough. If you're someone who's sensitive to salt, you could go ahead and cut this salt down by about half so that you have some room for the salt on the outside if you really love that, or you can use this full amount of salt and not use as much salt when you garnish your pretzels later. Let's just give that a quick mix here just to combine those ingredients, just for a second. And then we're gonna add what is left. We've got some instant yeast. Because it's instant yeast, we can actually add it right into our dough. And then I'm also going to add some butter. And then finally, some water. And I'm just going to let this mix until the dough forms. Now, we're going to mix it on low speed at first, kind of until the dough comes together. Sometimes in bread baking, this is referred to as the pick-up stage because it's literally picking up all of the ingredients to form the dough. We're gonna mix on low speed for about 3 minutes. It'll still look pretty shaggy. And then we're going to raise the speed to more medium, and we're going to mix it for 4 minutes more. This is a pretty intense mixing period, and that is intentional. That's, again, part of what gives us that chewy texture and also that beautiful smooth dough that shapes and stays in whatever shape we want it to be in. It's just such an easy, beautiful dough to work with. This dough is special. I'm in love with it. I'm gonna marry it. True love. As you can see, this is really smooth and it's all come together in like one beautiful, lovely dough. So I'm just gonna sort of form it into a roughly round shape. No need to be precise. I have a bowl that I have lightly greased here with just some neutral oil, vegetable canola oil, nonstick spray, something like that. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in there, cover it with some plastic wrap or a clean kitchen towel, and we're gonna let this rise until it doubles in size. It's going to take an hour to an hour and a half. This dough has risen and it got nice and puffy, and now I'm just gonna go ahead and remove it. You can see this is just honestly such a dream dough consistency to work with. I'll go ahead and put a little flour down on my work surface and on the dough too. One thing I will advise before we get started here, you don't need a lot of flour when you are working with pretzel dough and shaping pretzels because the dough is more intensely mixed. It is a little bit firmer, and using too much flour can actually make shaping harder. I'm gonna go ahead and start dividing these. I really like to take the time to weigh pretzels out, each individual piece, and it's because then they're going to bake the same. You're not gonna end up with one pretzel that's a little too crunchy and firm. They're all gonna be nice and soft. So in all the recipes in this episode, you're going to see a suggested gram measurement weight. But remember, if you don't have a scale and you are not sure, how you're gonna get your pretzels even, you can just kind of follow my method that I talked about in our pita episode of cutting each one. If we're trying to get 12 pieces, cut it in half, then cut that half into 6 pieces. It's gonna help you get a more evenly sized final pretzel. So what I'm trying to weigh these to is about 85 grams. Once we have all of our pieces, I'm gonna start by flattening a piece of dough a little bit with my hands. And you'll notice I'm not working on a super floury part of the surface. I'm on a piece of the surface that's a little bit drier, but doesn't have, noticeable big flour clumps. So what I'm gonna start by doing is pressing the dough, kind of lifting it up and pressing it down. I'm making a log shape. And what I'm also doing with this is expelling air out of the dough as I begin to shape it. Once I have just like one little flap left over and I've made my log pretty much, what I'm going to do is bring it over one more time and use the heel of my hand to help seal it. And I'm really pressing firmly with the heel of that hand. And this is something that you see a lot of bread bakers do, but they usually do it really fast. So this is the slow version where I'm pressing it like this. And that's going to create kind of this nice seal here, which is part of the way we're gonna ensure that this stays looking nice and round as we keep rolling it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm gonna start rolling this into a long log shape. And the best way to make an even log, what you'll start to notice is, see, even look what happened when I started. I have a little bit of a thinner piece here, a slightly thicker piece here, slightly thicker piece at the end. The best thing to do is to apply gentle pressure in the center and then apply a little more pressure as you work your way out. And the reason for this is because the nature of rolling it, the center is always going to get thinner. So if you apply too much pressure in that center bit, you're gonna end up with a really thin piece in the center and big thick pieces on the end. But if we apply gentle pressure and then increase the pressure as we come to the outside, we're gonna have a more even total layer. You need a good amount of counter space to do this because we're eventually gonna twist this into one, big pretzel, but we gotta start with a nice long strip. So we're aiming for about 20 inches or 50 centimeters for folks using metric. And then once you get close to the end, you can even kind of go through and just roll in the places that still need a little bit of help. And this looks pretty thin and small right now, but trust me, these are going to puff up a lot as they do their final rise and as they get soaked and baked. So here's our first log. It's looking pretty nice, pretty even. Let's shape a pretzel. We're gonna start by holding the two ends in our hand, and we are just going to twist them onto each other twice. So as you can see, I crossed it over once to make an X, then I twisted it again. So we've got a nice twist there. Then I'm going to take this loop, I'm going to bring it down, I'm gonna bring the little feet through the ends and press them down onto that rounded bit. So we've got a few pretzels to shape. I'll show you again. Now you see what I mean about how smooth and easy this dough is to work with. Just it's so easy to manipulate. You can make it into lots of different shapes. I've got my classic pretzel shapes here. I'm just gonna put them slightly staggered on a baking sheet. So these just need one quick rest. Again, you can cover them with some greased plastic wrap, or you can cover them with a clean kitchen towel while you wait. So to work with food grade lye, you have to keep your hands covered, you have to wear protective goggles. You're actually at risk of a chemical burn if you do not handle things appropriately. It does make for an amazing pretzel, but I don't want the use of something like that to make you scared of trying pretzels at home. So this is where my good friend Erin Clarkson comes in. Erin has a fabulous blog called The Cloudy Kitchen, and she started making pretzels using a baking soda soak method. Now, lots of people do this. It's a nice alternative because it does the same kind of reaction that lye has. We're gonna both boil, create a skin on the outer surface, and we're also adjusting the pH with the baking soda. So it's going to kind of create a similar reaction. What it doesn't do that lye also does is create a nice golden brown exterior. You've got a good amount of water here, you bring it to a boil, and then you add baking soda to it. Be careful, make sure you have a large enough pot because it is going to bubble up when we add the baking soda to the water. Stir it in, make sure it's nice and dissolved, and then it's ready to soak. I've turned the heat off now, and I'm gonna just start adding my pretzels ready for their little bath. And you can do several at a time. I usually don't like to crowd them too much just because it can be difficult to turn them over. So I would say 3 or 4 at a time if you're using a pot of this size. See, now this one came a little unshaped when I lifted it up, so I'm just gonna press them back down. It's okay. You want to stay a pretzel, I promise. You're gonna be so delicious later, I put them in kind of presentation side down. That is where I want the majority of the soak to happen. And after it soaks for 15, 20 seconds or so, I'm just going to gently flip them. I'm using a spider. You could use one that's a more tight wire also. You could also use a slotted spoon. You don't want to use something like a tong or something where you could risk crushing or squeezing the dough. We want to be as gentle as possible. But also don't worry if you get a little divot in there from something like this. We're going to add some salt or seeds or something flavorful on top so you can cover up some of your mistakes with something delicious if need be. All right, coming back out from their soak, going to stagger them again on my baking sheet, and I'll soak these other ones. So to get that nice dark brown, we need to enlist the help of an egg wash. So this is just my regular egg wash, which is 1 egg, a tablespoon or so of water, and a pinch of salt. If you really like a nice dark brown exterior, you could actually do 1 egg and 1 egg yolk. That's gonna make it even more brown and just give it that really nice rich color. And you'll notice that when I'm egg washing, I'm actually going all the way around the sides, because the last thing we would want is just for just the surface of the pretzel to be nice dark brown and have like kind of the halfway mark be blonde. So we want to make sure that we get nice even coverage with this egg wash. This is one time where like better a little too much egg wash than not enough. After I get these all nice and coated, I am going to finish them. And I've got here some different coarse salts. If you can find it, you can look for a salt that's called pretzel salt. That actually is a really nice big granule of salt, and it's really lovely for use with pretzels. If you can't find that as easily, flaky salt is another really nice addition. And I actually love using flaky salt because it looks so beautiful too. I'm gonna sprinkle some of this with some everything seasoning, and that's another great way you can finish pretzels is with something like sesame seeds, poppy seeds. You know, you can really kind of treat them the same way you would treat a bagel and add a little bit of flavor on the outside in that way. All right, now these pretzels are ready for the oven. We're gonna bake them until they are nice and golden brown around the outside. And this is really the only place where I think a mistake can happen in baking pretzels, is if you bake them too long, they're gonna be much crunchier and crisper on the outside, and you're not gonna have that beautiful soft pretzel moment. So into the oven at 400 they're gonna go until they're nice and soft, but very golden brown. All right, so you've learned how to make pretzel dough. It really is so easy. And now the best part, we can use this same dough to make lots of different variations of pretzels, and they are all delicious. They are all awesome. And I just want to teach you basically how to bake it up a notch with pretzel dough. So first up, pretzel rolls. What we're gonna do to make pretzel rolls is divide it into 8 even pieces. They're gonna weigh about 130 grams each, and we're going to round them the same way I taught you in our roll episode of Bake It Up a Notch. We're gonna round them into tight little balls and then let them rise, soak them, egg wash them, and if you want, you can even use scissors to cut a little X into the top of your roll before baking to help it kind of open up and blossom to have a beautiful roll shape. Great for sandwiches, great for burgers, great to just eat. And these pretzel rolls will bake for 18 to 22 minutes. To make pretzel nuggets, divide the dough into 6 even pieces. They're gonna weigh about 175 grams each. We're gonna roll each of these into a log about 1 inch thick and then cut them into 1 inch pieces. These can be soaked, egg washed, and then we finish them with salt or the topping of your choice. The nuggets have a shorter bake time at 10 to 12 minutes. I am obsessed with pretzel dogs, which is a hot dog wrapped in delicious soft pretzel dough. For this, you're gonna wanna divide them into 10 even pieces. They're gonna weigh about 105 grams each. We'll start by pressing the dough into sort of an oblong shape. You'll place the hot dog on one end of it and wrap it up until it's fully encased. Be sure to pinch really well where the seam is so that it doesn't come unfurled during baking. After soaking, egg washing, and topping, these bake for 17 to 20 minutes until they are nice and golden brown. A cinnamon sugar pretzel is a really fun, sweet twist on a classic pretzel and might bring back some memories of your youth as well if you're into those sweet and salty sort of moments. So what I like to do for this is after soaking it and egg washing it, giving it a little bit of a dusting of cinnamon sugar before baking. Then when it comes out of the oven, brushing it with butter and adding more cinnamon sugar. This way, some of that flavor gets baked in and some of it is around the outside like a tasty coating. Another super fun variation of pretzels is to make one giant pretzel that you can kind of tear off pieces from. This is perfect for a party, perfect if you've got a lot of dip action going on as well. So this is one that I made and you can see, oh my gosh, it's a big pretzel. I actually have an article on how to do this on Food 52 where I even show with step-by-step pictures how to weave a giant pretzel of your very own. And saved the best for last, let's not forget my stuffed pretzels. Another awesome way to bake pretzels up a notch is to make stuffed pretzels. So this is actually an idea that they made at my alma mater, the Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park, New York. They would sell these stuffed pretzels with different kinds of flavors every day of the week in their bakery cafe. And I really loved it because it was such a combination of textures and flavors and such a great way to make something sandwich-like out of pretzels, but all in one. So I'm gonna do a few different flavors today with my stuffed pretzels. We made the pretzels just into rounds and then I sort of punch down the center and then shape it. It's actually a little bit like, for New Yorkers and East Coasters, a little like a bialy. So we have this kind of wider edge with a thinner center that's going to hold the filling, and that filling is gonna weigh it down. And then we have a bigger crust around the outside edge. Once I have boiled them and pressed just maybe like a half cup measure down into it to help flatten it a little bit more, I also like to egg wash them. So let's make a few different flavors. This first one, I'm gonna put a little bit of whole grain mustard. Now let's dollop a big old dollop of caramelized onion in there. Oh my gosh, look at that. And then just to kind of bind it all together, some Gruyere cheese. This is a time to do a hefty handful like that, you see? Let's do a pepperoni pizza inspired one. Dollop a little bit of tomato sauce in a few of these. And some pepperoni. And you know, this would be great with so many things, like even great use of leftovers, like if you had like some chickpea salad or like bean salad or something like that, that would be great in the center of these. This is some mozzarella cheese. I love to use fresh mozzarella in applications where a lot of people might use just shredded low moisture mozzarella, but it's very hard to shred the higher moisture mozzarella cheese. So what I like to do is do it in the food processor and just pulse it until it's kind of a fine powder like this, and it works really, really well. I think for this last one, I'm gonna take a little sweet tooth break, which is something else we do in my new savory baking book. There's lots of ways you can take even your favorite savory baked goods and twist them to make them a little bit sweet. Sweet and salty thing going on with pretzels. I think it sounds like a good idea. So what I'm gonna do is a dollop of peanut butter in each one. And then I'm gonna do some chocolate and some marshmallows. And I actually cut these marshmallows into bite-sized pieces just using scissors. So now we're gonna bake these just like we bake our regular pretzels, but we're looking obviously for some of that cheese to be melted. We're looking for these marshmallows to get gooey. Wanna make sure they're baked all the way through. And of course, we can still add a little bit of salt or something around the edge because these are still pretzels. So I'll give them a little sprinkling. I'll use a little bit of everything, why not, around the outside of our pizza. And then I think I'll just do a little regular salt on the outside of our s'mores ones here. Okay, into the oven we go. Thank you so much for joining me for this extremely golden brown episode of Bake It Up a Notch, where we dove into all things soft pretzels, along with diving in a little bit deeper to my new book, Savory Baking. I'm so excited about my new book because it's really about translating my love of baking into every meal of the day. You have meals here, we've got rolls, but we also have snacks here. We've got pretzel nuggets, and we have this giant shareable pretzel. And first things first, I think I need to eat a pretzel of some sort. Okay, I'm going for the dog. Look at this. Look at the squeeze. Look how spongy, chewy. There is no better fall baking project out there, and I hope you enjoyed diving into it with me. As always, all the recipes are linked in the video description below, so be sure to check that out. If you love baking and you love things like soft pretzels, please do me a favor and click like and subscribe so that you can be made aware of all of our new episodes as they become available. Our next episode is on all things cornbread, and I can't wait. Until then, as always, happy baking! Wow. That's a new one. I made the bite noise before I took a bite. I need some mustard.